on. And Roll20 is going to be a great place to start off with that.
Roll20 and Even in Death go head-to-head in this next matchup. Let's hear from the teams all about it.
Superstars, we were pretty disappointed because it was a really important match in terms of Crucible standings. It's important for us to look strong so that we're not chosen by Heroes Hearth. We currently think that Roll20 is the strongest team in North America. They have a really unique playstyle and going to be a difficult match for us. We are role swapping for this series. Hami's main tank is really strong, so and his rotational based macro sense is a step up, so we're gonna be putting Hami on main tank and I'll be moving to melee / ranged flex. And Batter will be moving to ranged flex as well, and off tank.
I don't want to lose a game until BlizzCon. That'd be my goal. I think it's not exactly up to us whether we can get first place in the standings because of how far ahead Gale Force is. But if we get the opportunity, if Gale Force drops a game into another team and we play Gale Force, I don't think we're going to lose the opportunity to get first. I feel like in scrims, Even in Death performs pretty well, actually. So I'm not really sure where the disconnect comes in between their low-pressure scrim environment play and their higher-pressure HGC performance. I think the only way Even in Death could break our win streak right now would be if we let up on the practice and the preparing. So as long as we don't underestimate them, I don't think there's really anything they can do to beat us this weekend. I used to play on TNC with How, and we're longtime friends. And How, I love you, buddy, but we got to get the 15-0, so I'm sorry.
Justin aiming for a 15-0. He was talking about a 21-0 last week, so we know what they want to do. But right before we got to hear from the teams, we heard from Lutano about how important it was that even if Even in Death goes to the Crucible, they want to show how strong of a team they can be. And I think it starts with what Justin was talking about, showing how well they can play. For a long time, Justin and Roll20 and other teams have mentioned that Even in Death plays better in scrims than they play in tournament. And for whatever reason, maybe it's the stress, maybe it's anxiety, they just do not show the same results as that they do in scrims.
It's a difficult problem to endure as a team because you sit in this weird situation to where it's easier to justify the outcome of specific things even though maybe it shouldn't, and that oftentimes can really set a team back, like to where you can make the easy excuse, especially live, because you're like, we are better than this, but you know, it's just happening in tournament day. But you've got to ask yourself, you know, the only matches that matter are tournament ones. So are you as good as your tournament results, or are you as good as your scrim results, right? And I feel like it's tournament results. So though the potential is there, potential is one of the most offensive things I think I can be called as a human being, because that means that I failed to turn it to something useful. And that is what Even in Death currently is struggling with identifying or overcoming here as a roster.
And there's a lot of potential in Heroes Hearth, the amateur or the open division team that was shouted out by Even in Death. There's a lot of players. Crowan was on there. Crowan has been in HGC. That is a terrifying team for anybody who is looking at the Crucible. Even like Superstars and Lag Force teams who have been here for a long time. Everybody is looking at that team as the team to maybe make it through the Crucible into HGC for 2018. But we're still talking about this series, and it starts on Tomb of the Spider Queen for Game 1, chosen by Roll20. Not a surprise. Battlefield of Eternity, though, has been banned by Even in Death, so they are limiting the 3 main battlegrounds that we see Roll20 have dominant wins on. Cursed Hollow, normal ban for Roll20.
And Roll20 picking up Tomb of the Spider Queen is not surprising. It's one of their favorite maps, as you had talked about, but it also is one that Even in Death feel pretty comfortable on. Displays a little bit of confidence from the members of Roll20, but at this point, they have no reason to not have confidence with themselves. They have yet to drop a game here in Part 2 in Phase 2. So Even in Death kicking off the draft. What do we see banned? It's going to be the Medivh.
Yeah, when I talked to Lutano, he said that they know that Garrosh is terrifying from Roll20, but you just have to ban Medivh versus them. You cannot allow Roll20 to get their Medivh because it's even scarier. And that alone was already an issue for a lot of teams who would go up against Roll20, but now that Roll20 have another hero that is that dominant to them, it's a whole different ballgame. If they continue to pick up these heroes that teams say, well, we just can't allow them to have it in that capacity, that is, I mean, I don't know, unbeatable of a team. You get to that point, you have that many picks, but at least Even in Death are going to take ETC.
They are going to take the ETC, and I really already like this thought process for the draft for Even in Death. I'm looking forward to see what they have to bring out here for Tomb of the Spider Queen, but looking over towards Roll20, what do they want for themselves? Garrosh, as you were talking about, such a big threat. Do we see the high Rhaegar other teams have been picking up? No, it's the Chromie, the old 1-2 for Tomb of the Spider Queen for Roll20. They've displayed this, I think, every single game they have ever played on Tomb in Part 2 is Garrosh Chromie.
Yeah, and Roll20 aren't the only team in this match even who love Chromie and love Chromie on Tomb of the Spider Queen. Even in Death have shown a lot of priority in having her too. So maybe even if they wanted to get Garrosh and Uther here instead, still respecting that Chromie is really important to their types of compositions, and it would be likely that Even in Death would take her. Greymane and Rhaegar, the next two for Even in Death. Greymane has been a high prioritized hero for Even in Death, but it's sort of falling off for Roll20, even though for a long time it's been a Roll20 classic hero to get.
What do we assume the ban for the members of Roll20 will be? They're hovering over a Malthael, so consideration at least when it comes to the thought process towards that solo lane. Who is Goku going to be on, and more importantly, who is he going to be facing? It doesn't stand out, but Malthael, I mean, he's risen in power. NA has accepted. He does percentile damage, and it turns out armor is a part of the video game, and it's very good to deal with that tool.
That it is.
I feel like this is not going to be a short-term thing. Malthael, honestly, with the way his kit works, unless there's a blatant number adjustment or a huge range indicator problem with his teleport, he just brings a little bit too much too easily to not be considered in any composition.
I am kind of surprised, though, that Roll20 aren't considering Malthael for themselves. They want to ban him, but Malthael also works pretty well versus ETC, who is also a warrior with armor. But in this case, Roll20 have other ideas for what Goku will be playing in the solo lane. Even in Death, have a Rhaegar. Is the ban on Uther now as a follow-up for the Garrosh combo.
I mean, it's gotta be, right?
Yeah, but typically that hasn't been a problem for Roll20 because they just draft Stukov instead.
That one's a bit of catch-22. I'm going to go with, I feel like the Uther's worth it.
Yep.
It's too easy compared to the Stukov. I mean, let's just go with kill potential alone, not considering other synergies. When the flip goes down, Uther's chances of being in a melee range and getting a point and click off a lot higher than Lurking Arm. Lurking Arm has to be done with like 0.25 seconds beforehand, then dead center of the mark, and then even then they can still walk away from the situation, unlike if there's an Uther. I'm not saying it's a must, but if you were going to not ban the Uther, I hope it's not with the perspective of the Stukov lingering in the back of your mind.
They haven't humbered anything yet.
Throwaway
so we'll
ban,
see what
nothing.
It is now. Uther. Uther ban.
We
for
waited
Even in Death.
for the absolute last second to get the most predictable ban. I was hoping that was just going to be the unheard of, or they'd ban nothing, or at least like throw away a Murky. I mean, there's strategic value to that. We haven't gotten a single one in HGC North America, but there is value towards it. Goku's going to be on the Dahaka.
And a Falstad. Falstad.
There's no Malthael, but a Falstad on a non-global map.
No, I'm just thinking a Glowering Falstad.
Ooh, oh, so you're going with more the hero. I was going with the pick and just considering the map and the circumstances. I feel like that's a little wild too. But the having Glowering on the Falstad, Glowering out of all of his ranged, I'm trying to figure out if there's any that really stands out to me as the go-to. His Vol is the one I feel like that comes to mind, but
well, Greymane. But Greymane's taken.
Yeah.
My thought was maybe Lunara. But this could work, definitely. Tyrande. Also Tyrande. We have to remember that that's a Glowering hero now.
Oh my goodness. Tyrande, Gul'dan. Talk about a rotation of heroes I thought I would never say together. Tyrande and Gul'dan. More so than the rarity of the two, but the intent of them both. It just all... Again, kind of kitty wampus here.
That is a squishy composition for Even in Death. Last pick for Roll20, we are considering the support. So what support will be able to deal with the burst factor of Tyrande and yet be able to keep up with the sustain heals of Gul'dan?
With the Rhaegar gone, the Uther banned out, all burst supports are removed. Then you either go for the Malfurion, which is worst case to keep anybody alive. He can't do that. Kharazim can do it with the squishies that you have. He does better with the AoE damage overall, but you're vulnerable.
I still thought that was going to be Stukov.
It doesn't keep anybody alive, you die to the combo every single time, and that is the biggest thing I'm concerned for with this composition. Not saying that is a bad pick. We know they've displayed it in the past. It does synergize, but if you remove the names, and this isn't a staggered, and you see the Toronto on one side, and you go, oh, this has a chance, you don't go, let's pick nothing with a cleanse or no burst heal on the other side, and go, oh, that makes a lot of sense. You know what I mean? It's just, if you remove the names, that seems all kinds of out of nowhere. But again, this is, Roll20's displayed it, it synergizes, just doesn't stop any of the advantages on the other side.
Yeah, I think Roll20 will be in for a world of hurt if Even in Death can start to get the momentum going in their side. If they start to get some picks with ETC Toronto, but I still think that Roll20 is a highly skilled enough team that they'll be the ones dictating the rotations, which means they'll be the ones setting up for the kills. And because of that, Even in Death will never really be able to get things going with what they're wanting to do in their comp.
It should be noted that a lot of the things that I say in this series, because of how dominant Roll20 has been, and we know Even in Death being one of the more struggling teams here in North America, like when I throw that out, it's more of like with the assumption, yes, Roll20 is probably going to body already. And when it's like, oh, that's a risk, it's like, is it enough to set it back? Probably none. I feel like in-game is the only place they can make a mistake so big as to lose a game. But it is a risk, and it's those kind of moments where you see a team flexing and it's not a unique pick, it's more of comfort. I always feel a little bit scared because that is a trend North America has displayed historically, and in my opinion, part of the reason why when we go internationally, we're unwilling to be able to play whatever the meta is because when we had the chance, we always go to our comfort, never towards what might optimally fit into it. And I'm not even claiming that Karzim is better. I'm just saying that this is something that exists, and it might not be the best direction we have gone as a region.
Well, let's see how Game 1 goes between Roll20 and Even in Death. We're going to Tomb of the Spider Queen. We'll see you there.
Roll20 in blue with Glarong on the Falstad. We've got Justin on the Garrosh. Goku playing the Dahaka. Prismaticism on the Chromie. Talk about comforts, this roster. And Buds on Stukov. The only part of that feels slightly out of place is Buds on Stukov. And Falstad, I guess that's a good point. Probably even more Falstad over the Stukov.
Yeah, he's only played Stukov and Uther for this entire part so far. But Even in Death, Gul'dan played by Lutano. Hao playing Rhaegar. Frozen X will be playing Tyrande. Up next, we've got Battery playing Greymane, which means the role swap did go into effect. Homicidal will be playing ETC.
And Echoed Corruption is going to be the level 1 choice here for Even in Death on the Gul'dan. Also, a more owl-centric build for the Tyrande player there, Frozen X.
Yeah, generally is the preferred Tyrande build, except for when we saw Glaurung play Tyrande.
Justin is going a different Garrosh build for the first time.
No unrivaled strength. Instead, he has Warbreakers. This enables him to do get more pulls with Groundbreaker more often. So maybe instead of thinking that he was going to be able to throw people all the way back with the increased range of unrivaled strength, he wants to have the cooldown for that. And we'll see. The one time he said that he would take this instead is when he took Intimidation at 7, which is attack speed reduction. And that makes a lot of sense versus the composition that you see from Even in Death. So it's probably the approach he's going for.
Very smart job there down below. You saw Goku holding out that lane as much as possible, keeping it on his side. It's going to be as defensive as he can possibly be, never lurking out and risking his positioning so the Tyrande can come down and get a kill onto him. But the coolest part about this is it's now forcing that 2-man of Even in Death, so much so that the flight of Glaurung down below might be the thing that gets them the kill. Buds with that, I don't even know the name of that gross thing he throws out, but he hits it, sets up the kill with the passive, and first blood for Roll20.
Are you talking about the...
What am I looking for?
The arm? Yeah. Lurking arm?
No.
The weighted pustule.
The weight, yeah, I almost called it like a pustule. Like I was going with postulating, not a pustule. I don't know.
Pustule is infinitely grosser, but that is the name. You've got... Take a look at it this way. You've got the good virus and the bad virus. The good virus heals you. The bad virus slows and damages them.
Yeah, and he threw out the cooties, and sadly the members of Even in Death were there to catch them.
Of all the bad viruses, we're going to settle on cooties.
I mean, that's the worst virus there is, right? You grew up?
You tell me.
You grew up?
All right, well, I wanted to talk about this role swap for Even in Death before we get too far into this game. The team feels like Homicidal is so good at macro-based rotations. He is insanely good at that. So that's why they're switching to having him on the Warrior, so he can sort of lead the charge with that as ETC, we're seeing it here, and Frozen X can follow up with that. I have no doubt in Homicidal being able to perform well on the Warrior, especially given some time, and Battery to switch over to his role. My main sadness, almost, is that Homicidal is one of the primary playmakers for this team. When he plays things like Illidan, when he plays Malthael, now we're not going to have that.
But if he's as big of a playmaker as Justin on the ETC, maybe that's what they need, you know?
That's
the Mosh
true.
Pit Avenue is something that could set them aside. I do agree with you. At first glance, I am scared when knowing that Homicidal pulling away from those amazing melee assassins he has been so very dominant on. Frozen X did get flipped away here, but he's got a couple of friends, and they are going to be just fine. The laning phase really hasn't been too much going on, but that's more even in Death's fault, or maybe more their problem than it is their fault. When they do have the Tyrande composition and they aren't making things happen, and your opponents are winning the rotation without fear of dying, that means that Roll20 is actually winning this game, though nothing's happening.
Yeah, that is an excellent point. Drag's going to pull in Goku, and or Hao, and Prismaticism's there to try to get the follow-up damage.
The cooties.
Cooties.
I like it a lot more.
Me too.
I think it's growing up.
I'm glad. I'm so glad. Both teams hoping for their first turn in. And Roll20 has more gems, just slightly more in place. But no first kill for Even in Death with the ETC Tyrande. So even with this change up, trying to get the Tyrande, having more of a ranged composition, they still have not been able to set anything up with the ETC Tyrande rotations.
Battery's going to be able to get his 12 in. That's a nice breath of fresh air as Glorong comes in on that landing strip, man. He's been so offensive with these flights, and honestly, I love it. The fact that we are even seeing an argument, levels 1 through 9, for Falstad and its flight plays on a map like Tomb, it's just brilliant here for the members of Roll20.
Oh my goodness.
Hit me with it. What is it?
I know why he's doing this.
Why is he doing it?
He has been prioritizing heroes a lot. Okay, I was like, is anyone going to stop this? He's been prioritizing heroes a lot more that allow him to make rotations for ganks. He's been playing a ton of Zeratul. And now he has Falstad with flight.
You might be right on that one. It fits, out of all the ranged, it does fit the play style that Glorong would like to, and his heroics of equal impact to that of Void. Maybe not equal, because that's not really a true statement within heroes, but it's close as it can get. About as close as Glorong getting over that wall there. That was a tough one. But Roll20, they have the first Webweaver phase descending here. We'll see what Even Death can make happen to be able to delay. You've got to be considering the fact that this is a poor defensive composition with the Tyrande, and Roll20 is punishing it perfectly here on bottom.
Pull. How now in danger. Slowing Sands immediately comes down to body blocks are good. Rhaegar taken down as the siege continues. Roll20 choosing not to just push in the mid once they saw a lot of Even in Death down in the bottom, wanting to get right in there and try to get some kills with their Garrosh is going to enable them to get more experience, but also not allow for any free clears really, except for the Gul'dan. Dahaka and Falstad using those globals still to push along with the other Webweavers, but their main priority now is getting the Webweaver all the way up to this bottom fort, and they just about have heroic abilities to get the next turn in.
When they get the heroic abilities, we can assume that bottom fort will fall. The question is how much beyond that point does Roll20 gain on Tomb of the Spider Queen in game number 1 in this series. Even in Death's trying to use this downtime of a disadvantage to take the only safe objective on Tomb of the Spider Queen, being their night camp. They will end up getting it, but it's just a stalling tactic, taking what you get while you can get it. You by no means are being the playmakers here as Roll20 finishes off that fort.
Glorong barrel rolls away from Even in Death, and Homicidal was hoping he could catch him with a power slime, but still it's fairly treacherous for Even in Death to be out in this battleground with not having heroic abilities. Gust stalls once. Now Prismaticism is in line to continue stalling.
That was really well done by the members of Roll20 to be able to use the Gust to make Chromie get in position to be able to get the delay. We find ourselves in a case where it didn't work for long enough. The members of Even in Death get their Webweavers, but it was still clever coordination from them. Heroics will be here for the members of Even in Death. And that is a must-have situation, more must-win situation. The next fight that they choose, members of Even in Death need to be successful with it because they have an early game composition. They've dropped the gems for this turn-in, and they're already down so much. This is, for me, the last moment that you're going to be able to say Even in Death had an advantage in this game is with these Web Weavers, unless they make something happen with them.
A lot of changes with those heroic abilities. Starfall for Tyrande. Stage dive for ETC, even though this is a smaller battleground, maybe feeling a lot of the pressure of the globals, or just trying to get into a better position to zone away for his 3 range. To go for the throat for this Greymane, but nothing as crazy as Rain of Destruction. Gust pushes Lutano right into Goku. But a Starfall will be dropped. Nobody else really here yet. It might be that Glowering ends up being in a lot of trouble. Horrify behind the power slide, and Falstad drops.
Drop all the spells they possibly can. Even in Death, get themselves a kill, but is it enough? Roll20 want to try and capitalize. The step inward from Homicidal there, the reason and why we do not see him being one dead cow. Great dodge there onto Justing's drag. Frozen is able to drop a couple gems in, but they do not have enough unless Homicidal confirms his turn-in.
Homicidal would way rather be aggressive because now Justing is the next to take a ton of damage. Chromie gets out alive. Goku, Glowering, and Buds doing their best to zone people away from Justing, and they do force an Ancestral Healing with that drag.
But Justing's still extremely low here. There are enough gems for the members of Roll20 to get a turn-in. Prismat and Justing look like they're going to focus on that. Drop the Slowing Sands, the zone. Owl number 1, it's going to be a touchdown there. Falstad not going to start the channel down below, and the 13 is creeping up for the members of Roll20. Even in Death's got to force this.
23 stacks so far on that Ranger, but things get a lot better. You already see some of the piercing, so she's been able to continue building up the base quest. Drag connects. But yeah, once Even in Death get to 13, a lot changes as Empower reduces the cooldown every time Tyrande can hit one of those Sentinels on a hero, plus the fact that it reduces the cooldown by 4 seconds at its base.
13's finally here for Roll20. They go with a drag and a lurking arm. That's 29 gems left here. Glara goes through, but a brilliant cleanse coming out from Hao.
So good.
Keeps his team alive.
Justin goes around the wall just to catch Greymane, and they'll get that kill too. More gems go down and more gems dropped. Goku still doing his best to make sure that Even in Death can't pick those up.
Owl goes down. Nobody is going to lie victim to that one. Justin's appreciating his passive in situations like that one. But when Even in Death fails with that Web Weaver phase, Roll20 now is going to be fine with getting themselves a Web Weaver, and more importantly, the boss with a talent here. 13s will be here for Even in Death, but it's going to be very unrealistic that they have a successful defense, considering Starfall is down for 42 more seconds, and Horrify for another 30. Those are the heroics of team fights for Even in Death.
Yeah, they are. Trying to make sure that they can go into the throw pit of the boss without Starfall and Horrify. There's no way to do that, so they'll just have to eat this boss and the Web Weaver that's behind it. Roll20 is going to siege along with that, but they still have their double global composition, making sure to keep up the siege and the soaking in multiple lanes. Justing feeling out where he can find a pull with the Warbreaker. It's not quite done yet. He still has a few more stacks to get from that. He didn't end up getting the Intimidation for attack speed slow, but still got defensive measures. So once he finishes the quest, he has Warbreaker, Groundbreaker on a 5-second cooldown, and then defensive measures gives you a shield for up to 6 seconds. So it constantly helps him out a lot more with the self-sustainability versus this composition from Even in Death. And we talked about all the different damage that Even in Death has, but especially if with Hunter's Mark, Tyrande is focusing on trying to bring Garrosh down in the fight.
The double global has been split pressuring bottom, while the 3 members of Roll20 with that boss and top Web Weaver were sieging away. They take the top keep front wall, they get the bottom keep front wall, and only 1 turret lie in mid. 2 levels down, and the second or third most powerful talents here are down. Even in Death, they need something, and I don't think that the Web Weaver phase, if they do get a Web Weaver phase, it's just stalling to get them 16. By no means is that proactive. It is going to be just, again, like you saw with the Night Camp earlier, and here, taking what they can get rather than making them play over Roll20.
Tyrande checks and sees that Buds has been bringing are getting the bruisers in the mid. Even in Death has bruisers too, but without 16, they're really relying on trying to catch somebody out and get a kill and get a man advantage if they're going to get a Web Weaver phase to work.
Justin's going to move right on through. Not going to land there with that pull attempt on Lutano. Dragged in a connect for Goku. Even in Death still miles away from their 16 talent here, but you see them so unwilling to give this up uncontested. They know that it is beyond their capability to stall out this turn-in of Roll20, but it hurts so bad to give it up for free too.
Roll20 have gotten so much with every single Web Weaver phase that they do get. Already the forts are down. There was a boss and a Web Weaver double play. The bottom keep has started to take damage. There is enough that Roll20 can bank on being able to get a keep at this point once they get that turn in. And with those gems, they have enough to secure it.
And still, it is a huge gap for 16 of Even in Death. What do we see, Roll20? Do you want to emphasize the turn-in, or do you wait until 16 is just barely achieved by Even in Death? Horrify is dropped onto Prismat. Battery's in range. Justing's going to go ahead and into the fray. Glong's here for the Gust. Uses it offensively. Now Battery's on an island. He has disengaged. We'll see that in a second.
Yeah, it was sort of a defense-offense job of a Gust, but Butts was the one that almost went down. Uses Flailing Swipe, though. Homicidal stage dives in, trying to catch anybody, just anybody at all for Even in Death to get a kill and get them 16.
It was very, very close there. And Even in Death may be in a position now, suddenly, to get at 16. They do take a step back. Gul'dan showed himself up on top. Goku's going to start the channel. Battery's there with Flask 1. Who's going to step up for Interrupt 2? That's going to be Homicidal. He takes some poke.
I think it's just way too hard to try to turn in with all of Even in Death throwing all of their spells at you. Look at Tyrande, all the range of her spells.
Glong, though, he's fed up with it. He wants this bottom keep. He wants to make sure that Even in Death is in a lose-lose scenario. Homicidal not able to connect with the power slide. Glong still paying attention to bottom. This is going to be a keep, and more importantly, Justing turning in through that bottom turn-in. Web Weaver phase, a keep, everything just taken out from beneath Even in Death here on Tomb.
Really cool to see Roll20 because it was too difficult to turn in and they were just taking free damage from Even in Death to send Falstad down to the bottom and importantly Garrosh to sneak in the turn-in all the way around so that Even in Death couldn't know that that was a possibility. And Even in Death weren't keeping an eye on both of them. They have, or both of the turn-ins. They have such a squishy composition. They want to ideally stay together. So now they get to stay together and defend versus this drag and the Web Weavers.
Wow, but Goku, he predicts the Horrify. He jukes it by going underground. Stage dive is used. The flip is going to land onto Frozen X. Ancestral connects from Hal, but it is not enough. There is too much damage from Roll20. They get the Tyrande, and more importantly, it's what they can get with this middle Web Weaver.
3-level lead for Roll20, and the siege continues with Chromie as they march forward to the second keep to take down. Even in Death don't have Tyrande, and they don't have Horrify. An offensive gust from Glaurung, but Power Slide saves Homicidal.
Barrel roll over the wall, and it looks like the keep is still going to be a long battle for the members of Roll20, but they have a Chromie setting down those slowing sands. This is actually one of the few situations where, I know this is weird to bring up now, but I wish you could kill your own sidewalls. This is like one of the perfect examples where they're at a huge disadvantage because they cannot control their sidewalls. They have to go through slowing sands. And you could say, like, well, all it takes is one misclick by Roll20, and they lose a huge advantage territorially. I just feel like it should be like a toggleable, I don't know, something. I've always wanted to rid of my own sidewalls, and I've never been able to formally show somebody, look at why I need this. And there we go, I've got it. Thank you very much, Even in Death and Roll20. We have found a situation where that's a pretty big disadvantage.
There's definitely some times with Stitches, too, where you would love to be able...
Or if you have anybody who escapes onto sidewalls, like I feel like there's infinite arguments of wanting to rid of your own, right? If your opponent has like an Illidan so he can't dash to the sidewall, I want to blow up my own sidewalls.
Maybe Heroes of the Storm 2020.
2020.
Trick's been talking about his wacky meta and everything's going to happen in 2020. Yeah, we'll have your own destructible sidewalls. It's like destructible rocks.
I'm going to have to ask him if he'll let that happen. Whenever the wacky meta does decide to consume competitive Heroes of the Storm. Solo queue, Team League, no one is safe.
Volstad. Here comes the fly, the gust. Nobody really in position to capitalize on that. Stage dive.
Just gets focused down. Goku's next adaptation gets all the heals, but Prismat is just dead.
Prismat's dead. Goku's gonna die too.
They've got it. Look at this. What is it? Even if Death is gonna win this, at least to almost turn this around, they're gonna start the boss. The boss gets one shot, 100-0. They got 100 gems. That's a double turn in.
When I talked to you about this match today, I said, what did I say? I don't want Roll20 to pick Tomb of the Spider Queen. They almost lost to Superstars on Tomb. Now they may very well be losing to Even in Death on Tomb. And their pretty shiny record is in jeopardy here. But at least there's a lot of pressure in the bottom lane. Homicidal dealing with that. He's going to have stage dive back very soon. How gets the turn in. We've got Web Weavers now behind the boss.
How gets the turn in? But what does Even in Death obtain? Because they can't just take a fort here, Gilly. This isn't a, oh, good job, guys. We got a couple of kills. We can decide to play the game the same way we have for the first few minutes. This is a all or nothing moment. Maybe not all or nothing, but all in a large chunk of the game. Because this needs to at least get a keep. Bottom Web Weavers are going to do nothing.
Oh, how? That stage dive is too late to save him, and Goku will just grab him right out of the stage dive.
You keep asking how, but I just want to know why. Roll20 here just flinging. I mean, it's getting ugly at this point.
Stukov is down, no support for Roll20. Falstad and Prismaticism getting back in. Lutano caught with all the members. There's no Gul'dan.
Chromie hits spell number 1. Battery's going to make it out. Boss has made it all the way to core, but he's pretty weak. The Web Weaver's weak enough to where this is what, at best 75, 60 left on the core. Glorong's even made it back. Nobody's too concerned. And now the mid Web Weaver will be rid of. So it's all said and done. Even in Death, they had that. What do we call this? Like the solar flare. They call it a short-lived light. That's what I'm looking for. Like, take the shortest lifespan star, and that's what I'm aiming for here. Whatever that is Even in Death.
Well, Red Giants are the
See, I am so
dimmest.
glad I got.
Like they're the ones that are the dimmest. Like they are on their way out. Red Giants.
Yeah.
But it's a star. You're asking for a star. What you really want is like a candle that has already been burnt out almost all the way through the wax.
Yeah.
And so you light it and it just flares up for a second and then it's like poof.
Gilly, why are you talking about light all the time? There's a game in front of us. Grow up.
I find that rude.
Roll20 getting the final, potentially final turn in. 61 gems. Prismat held on. He wouldn't want to be the risky man venturing outward. And I guess the owl was enough of a deterrent. They're all zoning out. Gul'dan's going to go ahead and get himself a turn in, or at least check that top turn in. Anchoring over both. But the bottom has got catapults building over time. That's something that the members of Even in Death are going to have to baby. You see them displaying themselves down below. What do we see Roll20 want to make happen now with this new information?
They're rotating around to the top turn-in, but Tyrande, Gul'dan are making sure to keep up with those rotations. They're not going to allow Roll20 to get another sneaky turn-in. That's the reason why they have one keep down in nearly a second. 21 minutes into this game. These next Web Weavers going to do a lot for whatever team can get them, and unfortunately for Even in Death, they lost so many gems that they are only halfway to their next turn-in.
They are so far away. Gust is used on bottom to make sure Goku can get this, but he's not going to get it for sure. How alone could have just totem W'd. So this is another failed attempt at a Web Weaver phase for Roll20. 45 seconds before they'll have their Gust back. And it is just who can Even in Death stall this turn-in. And if they do, how much does it cost them?
Battery. Might cost a battery.
Go for the throw. It's used, but he's dead. Flight used by Glorong.
All of Even in Death is here. This is time for them to fight. They've done a lot of damage to Prismaticism. Another Owl's going to nearly bring down Chromie.
I believe in Frozen X. He's got the sniper. The scope is there. The crosshairs aligned. He sends it out. You know, maybe too much American Sniper's like spirit motivation I had going on there. You know, Frozen X, you'll have another shot in a few moments.
Unfortunately for Lutano, it's going to be 70 seconds until he has a chance at another Horrify, which was also used at that time. Homicidal gets caught by a pull from Justin, but Justin takes a ton of damage in the process.
And we also haven't even brought up the idea that though this is, wow, another stage dive, she's back. Bit of a whiff and a flop on that one, but you got to respect the ambition.
I don't know, because when you have a Dahaka, the last time he stage dove in, Dahaka was able to grab him right out of that Frozen X. It's healing!
And then Hal gets pulled. Glorong flies. He's going to go down. That's support number 1. Lunar Flare connects with Glorong. That's not a 1v1 any Toronto wants to deal with, so she's out there. He goes ahead. That's the good old Glorong bunny hop we saw on display. And the members of Roll20 are done. They have done it. They will take game 1, but gotta say that was about the most entertaining last 45 seconds I've ever seen.
Yeah, that was very fun. I think it started all the way back when they had a stage dive into an immediate drag from Dahaka. But finally, Roll20 has Web Weavers. They're not even gonna wait for them though. They had the 3 kills and on 3 very impactful targets. Glorong flew in. I was like, oh, he's going to gust Geronda. And then he was like, nope, I've got 40 seconds left on my gust. I'm just here to party.
Just here to party. Geronda, one of the few supports you don't want to call out in the 1v1 avenue.
No.
Actually, well, probably not the worst. It depends if the Lunar Flare hits. If the Lunar Flare hits, I think probably the worst if she got Mark off first. But other than that, I would say it's got to be the Karazim. Glorong held his own in his 1v1. Roll20 gets the win. But even in death, I mean, I want to say I'm optimistic. I feel like they did a lot better in that game than I expected them to at first. But also, the Toronto composition, in almost no case did we ever see really the synergy between the two. It was just like a hero that, in fact, was playing Tomb of the Spider Queen. And I just wonder, was it the most optimal, or was the synergy there with that kind of pick? I know I'm always critical of Toronto's, but, I mean, let's be real here. There was no CC Lunar Flare almost once the entire game, really.
Yeah, Toronto was more just like a normal ranged assassin doing her thing. And granted, she did a lot of damage as we look over. Never mind.
They just pulled away the stats. The second we looked over, immediately removed the stats. Can't help you.
She was doing a lot. Like, even when you saw the Chromie, she nearly got a Chromie kill just by herself with all of the Sentinels. But we also had a stage dive that game instead of Mosh Pit. And we've been seeing a lot more of ETC across multiple regions. Europe